Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. Tonight's topic is farming in Vermont is a sophisticated business. Ben Kinsley is here. He's founder of Imperium Advisors, specializing in public policy solutions, grassroots advocacy, communications management, and government information management. And he's a co-host and co-producer of Vote for Vermont. Ben, good to see you.
Thank you, Pat.
And our special guest, you've been on before.
I've been on before.
Yes,
I'm back.
You have. He's back for a second go-round. Ensign Tebbetts, who is the Secretary of the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. Thank you very much.
Great to be here.
When did they add those other things on?
I don't
Who
know.
knows?
But the most important was food.
Yes, that is. That's a really good one. I
Food
like that.
and markets. Don't forget that.
That's my favorite thing anyway.
I know. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to be a little transparent here. Much of this show is focused on an article that I read in Vermont Business Magazine, and I would really encourage you to read it because it's very interesting. You'll learn all about, the title of this thing is Ensign Tebbetts, the Quintessential Vermonter. That is so cool. I had to look it up, but exactly what quintessential means, but that's good. And it was written by Joyce Marcel.
Yes.
Yep. And I got a little help from the agency's website here, but that's most of the questions will focus on what was said and written about Ensign in that article. So I would hope you would pick it up and read it.
Yeah, I had a great time with
That's
Joyce.
good.
She spent a few hours at the agency, and
Nice.
it was a nice conversation. She's been doing those cover stories for more than a decade, I believe.
Oh, really?
And very in depth, and she spends a lot of time with you, which is kind of what we're doing here, spending a little bit of time
And then you
talking
sweat
about.
to see what that.
Well, yeah.
What the finished product looks like.
I'm still here.
That's true.
I still hold the title, so
The
I'm
governor
okay.
hasn't read it yet. Susan sent me the article, by the way, my sister.
Oh, yeah.
She said, "Here's something from about Ensign." I
Yeah.
said, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, not that this whole show is kind of about you and what you do and your agency and all that stuff, but we ask all of our guests to talk a little bit about themselves, their background, why they're, what they're working on that's interesting, that kind of thing. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I grew up on a dairy farm in Cabot, which I still live there. I still live on the land with my family. From there, I went to school. I was a big Red Sox fan, and I listened to the radio, listened to WDEV all hours of the day while milking cows. And that sort of prompted me to think, well, maybe I want to go into radio,
Great.
or closer to Fenway Park, actually. And went to school at Emerson College, which was a communications school.
Yep.
And from there, I was fortunate enough to graduate from there in 1987, and then came back, and my first paying job was at WDEV Radio,
Great.
working there in reporting news. So I did that for a while. In 1994, I went into television, working for WCX, and I
Right.
worked in Rutland for a year.
That part I didn't know.
Yeah, I worked in
didn't know
Rutland.
that.
I guess I didn't make a big enough impact in my storytelling.
know that.
If I was down in Rutland, I'll have to review my stories down
So
there.
you have to, because I didn't.
know.
I said, Rutland, what is
Yeah,
he doing?
yeah.
over
No,
there?"
but I loved that experience because I didn't have a lot of knowledge of Rutland in southern Vermont. I also got down into Bennington and also
right.
over to Brattleboro and Windham County in Windsor County.
Yeah.
So you covered a territory, not necessarily a beat where you had a specific thing. So Rutland was fantastic. Strong community like it is today.
right.
Strong community. And I had a grand time there for about a year, but then when someone left the Montpelier Bureau up here at the State House, I could get back closer to the cows, and so I worked out of Montpelier and lived in
Were you
Cap.
running a farm?
Yeah, I was
Working
still
in
milking.
Rutland?
I was
Good
still.
grief.
I would come back on weekends and help my parents milk and so forth. And
Better
that-
get me home real quick.
Yeah.
I'll go milk the
Friday
cows
night-
after a long day of working.
Yeah. Friday nights I get in the van and the only issue was if I had breaking news in Rutland, I had somehow had to get back there quickly to cover it because I was also the bureau. You were shooting your own material, so you were the photographer as well.
Oh, wow.
So you had the gear, but I always had the gear with me.
Right.
And I only got caught a couple times having to. I remember going. There was a bad crime in Stockbridge. I think it was Stockbridge, and it was Christmas Eve or something like that. And it was a serious crime, and during an ice storm. So I was
Wow.
white knuckling back to get the video that you needed back then. So, but I only got caught a couple of times. But I did learn how to take pictures and do the whole thing. They called it one-man bands. That's what they used to call them.
Very nice.
So then I did that for a while, and then I left. I had about 14 years in the Capitol Bureau
Yep,
in the State
that's
House.
right.
I used to cover you when you
Yes,
were
you did.
motor vehicle
Yes, that's
commissioner
right.
when you corrected that, whatever was going on over there, and got that place
Exactly.
back in shape.
Yeah, that was a good job.
And labor, you were also, I
Labor.
probably covered you then. I probably
Yeah.
interviewed a million times. All good news,
Oh,
of course.
good, of course. I was on, what is it you guys did on W?
Oh yeah, you can quote me.
You can quote me. I was
Yeah.
on
Did you still have your mug?
Yes, I do. We have it in our cabinet. and
Yeah.
we use it.
That was the gift. If you agreed to be on the
We
show.
got- well, this is our mugs, but I gave so many away, and then
Yeah, they're very
Then
nice.
I went and repriced them, and so
Yeah.
we're not doing that anymore.
No, but I tell you, at CAX, they're under lock and key.
Oh, sure, because
So
they disappear.
So you had to. So that was a big deal. If you were allowed to even get the key
Oh.
to go in there and get the guest.
Oh, I did have one. I have it.
So you keep it, and they had one for a while that had a gold rim, and people
And
were putting it in the microwave.
can't do that.
You can't do that.
It
They were
explodes.
blowing-
It
they're
makes
blowing
it
up.
look like stalactites and stalagmites. 'cause
Oh, I
all
didn't
the whole
know that.
inside just burns.
Yeah,
That's
good
good to
stuff.
know.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
exactly.
great. You still
Something
have.
to remember, WCAX,
Yeah,
right?
you can quote me. Yeah.
You go me.
Very cool.
I have to tell you this real quick. I know I was supposed to be interviewed by a radio station in Rutland, in the Rutland area, and I got caught up in an accident. So I'm trying to make it on time. I stopped at Peg Flory's house, and I said, "Peg, I'm supposed to be interviewed." I said, "Can I use your phone?" So I sat in her living room,
Yeah.
and she's feeding me answers. It was a good interview.
Yeah,
and they
that
never
sounds
knew
like
where
something
I
that
was.
Peg would do.
Yeah, she's there. I'll help. Don't worry.
Well, that's
so, and
wonderful.
it was cool.
Yeah.
So one thing you didn't mention that's more recent past, or actually current, I guess current news. You have quite the prolific Twitter feed, which I definitely highly recommend anyone watching
Thank you.
to follow that. There's a lot of really
I
interesting
just-
stuff on there.
You know what's it's been keeping it busy now is ticks.
Oh, yeah.
This is
yeah.
the summer of. So I've
Yes.
been I've gone for 4 walks, and every time I've come back from a walk recently, I had a farm visit today, and I'm at the office and I'm at the computer,
Oh, gross.
and I'm like I feel something crawling on me, and it's relevant to what we do because we have an entomology department at the agency. So
Yeah.
there we go out and do a tick surveillance. So we're out in the springtime looking for ticks, and then we test them in case they are carrying the Lyme disease, and we're working with the health department. But lately, I've been photographing them and getting video of them crawling on me and posting them on Twitter, and then
Oh, lovely.
putting a link to people of what you're supposed to do. You know, you're supposed to take frequent showers if you go
Right,
out. The other
right,
thing is to put
right.
your clothes on high in the dryer for like 15 minutes, and make sure that
That's a good idea.
You know, you just all that. But I think the main thing is making sure every time you go and don't walk in the tall grass if you can help
Right.
it. I think I've been in the tall grass too much lately.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
And do you have your animals, although your
Yeah,
cat doesn't
animals,
want
and I have a white dog, so it's easy to spot a tick on
to-
a white
well,
dog.
I was just going to say, I put white sheets on my bed all the time now. I've got all these fancy flower matching stuff. No way.
No.
I put white, just when the dog gets on the bed, I want to see if he's bringing anybody with him.
And that's when we go out for surveillance
Yeah.
and do them. We do drag a white sheet across the fields, and it does
Wow.
pick up the ticks,
Oh my
so you
God.
can see them. And then we put them in. So today's adventure was I went downstairs a couple floors in the agency, and they put it in a thing, and they're going to tell me what it is. The expert wasn't
Oh, was
there.
it in? Was it in your? Was it
No,
in-
it was just crawling. It
Oh,
hadn't been on very long,
Yeah.
and it hadn't attached itself to me. But this particular year seems like we do have a lot of ticks.
They're everywhere.
Do we
Yeah.
have those kind that make you not like meat?
I don't know.
I hope not.
I hope that would.
That would
That would
just
be horrible.
kill me.
that would be.
Just put me over the edge.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
It makes you nauseous when this is true. I know that they had it on
Yeah.
television. When they bite you, you don't want to eat meat.
Wow, that would be.
That would be.
I had lamb sausage
Forced
today.
veganism. I don't know.
That was wonderful.
I used
Yeah, I'm a meat person.
I used to live in Fishkill, New York, for a couple of years. I lived there, and they had literally the highest tick concentration in North America. in Fishkill, New York at that time. I don't know if that's still true or not. But and we would be just outside in the yard and come in with like 3 or 4 ticks on us every
Yeah.
single
Oh,
day.
it's disgusting.
Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just kind of something that we got used to.
I think we're going to have to get, just, someone said I was a tick magnet.
Other words that match that,
Is
would
that a
be-
compliment?
I don't know. I'm thinking of something else, but it's okay.
awful?
Chick magnet, that's
Tick-
called.
tick magnet. Tick
There it is.
magnet.
What
So-
a great thing for your resume. All right, so back to the show. So in this article, they said farming in Vermont is a sophisticated business. And that's a quote from the article. And I just wanted you to explain how things
Yeah.
have changed these days for our farmers.
We ask a lot of our farmers now. We ask them to, take dairy, for example. We ask them to produce a quality, safe product. We ask them to comply with water quality regulations and food safety regulations. We have a public that wants to know more about what they're doing and how they produce it and how they're taking care of their animals. Technology, of course, is a huge part of what they do. We have some farms that have transitioned to using robots to milk the animals, which is very sophisticated. And that could be a small farm. I was at one in Washington recently, and they have about 100 cows, but they have 2 robots. And it's a game changer for them because it changes their quality of life. No longer do they have to be in the barn at a regular
Right,
schedule. You got to milk the cows at least twice a day, usually 12 hours apart. So they don't necessarily have to be in the barn at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning. They could be doing something else. They could be
Yeah.
doing something else on the farm. They could be getting their kids ready to go to school or childcare.
Right.
Same thing in the afternoon. This family can now attend a sporting event if they wanted to, or go to another
Quality
meeting.
time,
Quality
right.
time.
Right.
And of course, labor is difficult to get. It's difficult to find people who want to do that type of
Right,
work.
right.
So this robotic system is helping, smaller, medium-sized farms. They are on bigger farms as well. You may have 4 or 5 robots.
Well, you were telling me when you were on the show last time that, and there's fewer, I've got notes here, fewer than 2,000 farms left in New England, and about half of them here in Vermont. But you said, which I found fascinating, and I've quoted you, that even though we have so much less farms, we actually have the same production, if not more, because
Yes,
of
and that's
technology.
Technology and quality and feed and
Yeah.
care and so forth, and that is, cows may leave a certain farm, but they may go to another farm. But production has
Yeah. I
remained
just think that's
stable, and
fascinating.
it has not changed, and that's that's part of the issue as far as the reason farmers are not getting as much for their product now is because we have too much milk across
Yeah,
the country.
I read that too. Does somebody not regulate that and say,
Well, it's a
hold off?
No, it's a federal system, which I think maybe 5 people in the world understand.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated.
Pretty complicated system based on, and in just a perspective, dairy farmers are paid for their product after they deliver it, and they don't know what they're going to get paid probably at least a month later.
Wow.
And not many industries would
Right.
do that, but that's the way the system is developed, and I think it's so complicated. No one's figured out a way to correct it or change it. But it is a complete global, national system, so we can't go it alone in Vermont. We have to be part of the federal system. Our pluses are we have tremendous markets that we can deliver our milk to. We produce, the majority, like 70% of the milk for New England is produced in
Wow.
Vermont. So we got Boston, and then we got New York, we got Washington, Philadelphia, big markets,
Yes,
big
I buy
population.
Booth Brothers right in
Sure.
Cape Porpoise, Maine.
Wonderful.
Yep, I
So
do.
so that's that's part of the system. But yeah, we about 15 or 16% of all the dairy that's produced in the United States is exported to other countries. So when we have 1 or 2 swing, it can really impact what our farmer is paid. Price of milk is inching up a little bit now. We got a little bit of encouraging news after 4 years of depressed prices. It's starting to go back up a little bit, and part of that is because too many of them have gone out across the country. This particular case, Vermont's in the same situation as New York is in, and Wisconsin is, a big dairy state, and Wisconsin is going through terrible times with their farms. They have a lot of small farms that are not going to
That's
going to
really
survive.
sad. I know in Berlin, I think we had 7 or 9, and now we've got maybe 2 or 3, and one of them's not cows. It's vegetables and flowers and stuff like that. But which is great. But it really reduced the number.
Right.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about tariffs later, but what are the major international markets for milk in the United States?
We send a lot of some of our whey product, whey powder, to China. We also, Mexico is one of our biggest. They love our dairy, Mexico. Canada in some aspects. So all those sort of 3 countries that we're hearing a lot about.
Exactly.
We're in the middle. I mean, for example, Agamark/Cabot had and has markets in China where they sell some of their milk powder. Another thing that's happened is, I don't know if you heard about the swine flu. There's a swine flu going on, and a lot of the animals in China are being slaughtered, but they were being fed some of our whey powder, so they're not asking for as much as that, because there's fewer animals, they don't need as much feed, so that's been an impact. So there's a lot of things that are not really working in everyone's favor right now.
It doesn't take much, does it? Just like you said, one thing.
Yeah. Some of the other countries that have big exports, like, for example, New Zealand is a big dairy state, and they export about 96% of their product to countries, like China and so forth. But things like weather events, big weather events can really change. They have a drought in New Zealand, or it's really wet, and they don't have the production to meet their markets, then the U.S. can step in and try to help that. So they're not kidding when we're in a global economy. We kind of think, well, in Vermont we can ride it out on our own.
No.
Some can, but not everybody. But we're tied to good or bad, we're kind of tied to a.
And they're remarkable people, the farmers. They're just always, my impression is, helping each other and supporting each other, and they're all in this together. And when I've been around farmers and meetings and stuff, they just.
They go. I mean, they're up against a lot. We've had a very wet spring and early summer, which has challenged them.
Yep.
But when the farmers are the ones that are in their rural areas, and we know Vermont, we need more support and help in our rural areas. And if a farm goes out in a rural area, it impacts not only the land and what's happening there. They're on the fire departments, they're on the rescue squads, they're on the select boards, they're on the school boards, and when that happens, it has a lasting impact across the landscape outside of that just immediate family. But they're strong and they adapt, and but this is the time I think anyone can, small gestures really go a long way to help farmers.
Well, we'll give a shout out to the farmers, because they're amazing. I think they are.
It's a hard job for sure.
Yeah, it is fine. Can't get me up at 200.
We'll get you some robots. Come on.
Robots.
You can't use that one anymore. We'll get you some robots.
That I could do.
Oh, goodness. So, Anson, your budget at the agency is about $26 million, give or take, and you have about 126 people working in the department, or the agency, excuse me, and 6 departments: administration, food safety and consumer protection, agriculture development, public health and agriculture resources management, Vermont Agricultural Environmental Laboratory, and agriculture water quality. Lots of things going on.
Aren't you tired yet?
I'm tired just reading that list.
Oh my God.
No, it's and that's one of the reasons I enjoy the job. It has a lot of variety in it.
Yep.
We talked about ticks. That one day we're talking about ticks. The next time we're talking about water quality. Next time we're talking about animal health.
Right.
We're talking about food safety. We have weights and measures. We do gas pumps. We do
Curds and whey.
Curds, yeah. We do scanners.
Yep.
So if you go into a store and so. It's amazing what goes through there on a daily basis, but it has tremendous variety.
Yeah. But you only have 126
Yeah, we're-
people.
yeah.
That's really lean.
Yeah, no, we're pretty lean,
Yeah,
and
I
we
think so.
and we have a culture there that we can do things lean and mean. I think
Yeah.
maybe it's because a lot of us have ag backgrounds and we're kind of used to
So
doing
a
things.
lot of
Yeah.
cross,
Doing
go
more
help
with
this
less.
guy
Yeah,
today.
yeah, and you know,
Yeah.
and I think, and we have a tremendous staff that's a lot of common sense.
Yeah.
One thing we're trying to focus on is customer service, which is your background
For sure.
is huge.
Yep.
When they pick up the phone or send an email, it has to be done. You answer the phone, you get the information, you respond in a timely manner.
Right.
You don't let it sit. And that's where we've been trying to focus on over the last couple of years.
Yeah,
and I
it is
think
important.
everyone's name is up on the website with their phone number and actually what they do, and not
Yep.
those sort of odd names we give state employees sometimes. If it's the
No,
B,
you're right.
if it's the B person,
Yeah.
you should know it's the B
Right.
person. It's not the some ag
Yeah, I
specialist.
appreciated your website. It was very detailed, but very, easy to get around, and it was great
Yeah,
to
we're
see
trying
the
to-
name with the face and
Yeah, and
find
cell
out how
phone
to
numbers up
contact
there,
them.
and we're we work for the taxpayers.
That's good. Good for you. But 126 is
No.
calling it close.
Yeah.
So out of all the things that your agency does, what would you say impacts Vermonters on a day-to-day basis the most? Like, what's the biggest touch point for a lot of
Well, I
folks?
think probably, on the economic impact, dairy, of course, is number one. It's about a $2 billion a year industry. So if that infrastructure starts to go
Right.
away, that impacts, the feed dealers, the stores, the truck drivers,
Sure.
and also we got to keep in mind, we always have to keep in mind we are feeding people. And that's what we do very, very well in America. We are very good at producing a quality product. And sometimes we ask our farmers to deliver it at a very, cheap price.
Right.
And but I think that certainly dairy is number one. And I think we have assurances with food safety. So meat inspection is very important. On the dairy side, we have sanitation as well to make sure the farms are following sanitation practices. Of course, water quality is a big new lift for us over the last few years with investments in water quality. People are really in tune with all of that.
Right.
That's impacting them. And anything that involves commerce or food, we kind of have a finger in it somewhere along the way. And we are for the most part, a regulatory agency to make sure things. About 80% of what we do is primarily making sure that we follow the regulations for consumer safety and assurance.
And you had made a comment in the article that because of the regulations, farmers are much more involved now than they were before, and that may be, while regulation may or may not be a good thing, it's good that it's making them be involved and understanding what you're doing, what they're doing, what everybody's doing.
And everyone is, it's probably in the 50s and 60s when there was the new sanitation stuff came in, it was a new learning curve for everybody, but now it's a matter of fact, they know what to be done. And I think as we get into the water quality stuff, we're farmers, they have to have nutrient management plans where they're going to spread manure. They're highly regulated of times of year they can spread it. There's bans. There's, you can't spread on snow. All that kind of thing. None of it can make its way to a waterway. They are inspected. All the large farms now are inspected annually. And a large farm I define as someone that has more than 700 animals. And we have about 35.
Really?
We have about 35 operations.
that have more than 700?
The more than 700. So
Wow.
they're inspected annually.
Yeah.
A lot of paperwork. And then we have medium operations and smaller operations. But out of the 700 of them, all of them are seeing Agency of Agriculture employees on a regular basis.
That's great. That's great.
Well, and we talk about water quality. I have never met a farmer that doesn't want to keep, lakes and rivers clean. I think it's a lot of times is giving them the tools and resources to do that, because a lot of this stuff, the preventative stuff, takes time, resources, and money to implement. And sometimes there are regulatory challenges, like, okay, I have a manure pit that's full, I have to spread or it's going to overflow, and then I'm going to get slapped with $20,000 in fees. And so do I do I spread, even if it's not an ideal time to spread, because I'm going to run into another issue? You know,
Yeah, and
stuff
we're
like
always trying to mitigate issues so we don't have those and really serious environmental problems. And everyone knows it was a very challenging year. The public lived it. They knew that we could have maybe put the snow tires on at the end of November, but they should have been on the
Exactly.
the big.
April.
They should have been. They should have been on November 1 because it snowed.
Right.
It snowed November 1 in Vermont, and it did not leave until the middle of April. And we had
right.
snow in May this year, and we had a lot of rain events. And there's a lot of rules and regulations around that. And then with these heavier water events, not only is there manure in these pits, but water's going in too.
Right.
So that's another factor when we get these rains that we're getting an inch or two at a time. That's going into these holding pits, which is a good thing. We want it all in there, but at some point it gets to the top where we have to decide we need to land apply it at some point.
I was going to ask this a little later, but now that we're talking about water, years ago the feds paid farmers to use phosphate.
That's correct.
And most of the water, Lake Champlain on the bottom, is phosphate, and so it was really a federal requirement that got us into trouble where we are, and the farmers just did what they were.
And it's one of
told
those,
to do.
we didn't know probably didn't have the know at the time what was happening, but they were. That is fact, and that's one of our challenges with our water quality issue. We have a lot of legacy issues, and it's going to take a lot of time, and it does not take a very.
I just don't think people know that, and I
Yeah.
think that helps to understand the dilemma that the farmers are in,
Right.
because they made us do it.
And we're, the practices we're doing now are we believe are, having a positive
Right,
impact,
right.
but over time it's just going to take longer and longer and longer in
Yep.
time to get that out. But a small amount that's in the bottom, we get a good heat wave, and the old science gets to going, and we've got an algae bloom. So.
Right, we have algae blooms going on right now in St. Albans Bay and in Mallett's Bay, and it's a lot of that is just legacy phosphorus load, like that phosphorus that went in there years ago and has been sitting at the bottom, and then you get really hot days like we had last weekend, and boom.
And we've had a lot of rain, and of course. You have a really rainy spring and early
Dredges
summer.
it up.
It just, a lot of stuff is making its
Yeah.
way towards
I
those
didn't know
things.
that. I didn't know that about phosphorus.
So
Okay, there you go.
Lots of fun.
Go ahead.
So most of us have heard the expression value-added agriculture products. Could you explain a little bit what those products are and why they've become so lucrative in the marketplace?
Well, value added, for example, let's take cheese. So cheese,
My favorite subject.
Cheese. So we have some folks we take dairy. They just want to sell their milk directly to a company. So they want to sell it directly to, say, to Cabot, and then Cabot will turn that into a value added product. So they're making. So we define value added. They're going to. The plan is do something with it. The
right.
plan is to get more money out of that as opposed to just selling it as a direct commodity. So Vermont has been successful in the artisanal cheese operation. So there are farms that milk cows, but also make cheese and market cheese and distribute cheese.
Right.
And they think that's a better model for them. They think it's a better situation in their family and their operation as opposed to just selling milk directly to someone and getting a
They must
paycheck
be
for that.
every place I've ever camped at, Cabot is always there.
Yeah,
It's everywhere.
Cabot is known, and Cabot is a very big company. They are a major player in the cheese world, and they're again, like, they're based on quality. This year they won Best New Product at the Fancy Food Show, Specialty Food Show in New York City.
Right.
Best New Product, and it was for their 5-year-old. They developed a 5-year-old cheese. They're 100 years this year, and they wanted to have a special product from it. So 5 years ago, they tucked away some cheese and made it. And this stuff is fantastic,
Is it really?
and it's pretty good. And the judges determined this was the best product.
Great.
So there's value added. We're seeing it in maple too.
Yep.
So we may have someone that's at one point was selling just maple, but they wanted to, maybe I want a hot sauce and put some maple in it. So they're
Right.
putting more value to that. So those are the type of things that.
That's great.
And we have I think about 100 people now that were working in the dairy field alone that are working in the value-added aspect of.
Well, and things like like barrel-aged maple syrup now. Like I think like Run Amok maple, those types of things are becoming pretty popular now.
And they are, and those are the type of products that the consumers are really responding to.
Yeah, well, I think with maple, the word maple in it can't be bad.
Maple,
Right.
and they're combining maple and cheese. One of the ones I was at a tasting once, and they just took cheddar toothpicks and dumped it in the Run Amok. Easy cocktail party there, no fuss.
There you go. Yeah, really.
And it really so maple and cheese. So those type
Get a
of
little
things.
heady topper on the side.
Yeah, my husband did it in his glory.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's I think there's a sausage that someone's putting.
With maple in
No,
it?
with heady topper in it.
There's
heady
a
topper.
sausage that Mackenzie just came out with Switchback in it.
Okay,
It's a
sure.
Switchback sausage.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but it's all based on quality and innovation,
Right.
and it's not done without a lot of hard work though.
No, for sure.
It's-
And I think everybody really respects the seal of quality when you got it on a
Yeah.
product. The expectations are high.
Yeah, they are. They
'Cause
are
think
very
it's going to be the best.
absolutely, and we're just going to keep trying to build on that.
That's great.
And
How is the relabeling of maple syrup going? Or did you kill that?
no, we're okay on and you're talking about the sugar added, the thing.
No,
with,
no, I knew that died, but they were going to change the way we label maple syrup.
No, they're getting rid of the grading.
Get rid of the grading.
Yeah.
to call them
TBC, yeah.
something else.
Yeah, that was done prior to when I arrived.
Oh, okay.
So it's
So it's out there?
It's out there, and it's sort of industry. The industry wanted it as a standard for other comparable to other states of what
Mm-hmm.
they were doing. And but you're on the fancy, and you know all that. You
Yes,
were
I
used to
do.
the
That's
fancy
right.
and the grade A and so forth.
And then they stopped the sugar. That is just
Well,
that is
we-
Mother Nature at her finest.
We
there.
prevailed on that, and
Yeah, thank God.
that was the FDA wanting to put another label saying it was added sugar on, but it's so.
Added from what?
Well,
That's what I want to
exactly. It's all
know.
Mother Nature doing
Yeah.
her thing.
But that one, after 3,000 comments, which I think probably 2,999 of
Were
them
bad.
from Vermont,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Good job.
prevailed
do
because
that?
we are the largest producer of maple in the United States,
Yep.
about 2 million gallons. This last year, which is an interesting year, a lot of people thought it never really felt like sugaring because it was kind of a,
Yeah,
you know,
we never
get-
knew what day it was.
wasn't it what
Yeah.
day
Yeah,
it was,
right.
and it didn't warm up enough. There wasn't enough sun, but we produced 7% more
Really great.
this year than last year,
Yeah.
and we did it in a shorter period of time.
Yeah.
It was like 35 days opposed to 52 or 53 days before, the year before.
Yeah.
So, Mother Nature, you just never know. There were a lot of times where people are just boiling 24 hours at
And
a
you
time.
can see, when you ride around, you can see how many people are doing that. Whether
Oh,
it's
yeah.
personal, because you see all the pipes going, the blue pipes going through the
Yeah.
trees, and you see that everywhere. People are really into it.
Yeah, it's been another crop. You know, it used to be, it was another crop, say for the dairy industry, and they'd put some taps in it. It'd be another crop they could do in between seasons. But now there are some people that's exclusively what they're doing is they're doing exclusively maple.
Technology has helped a little bit with that too, increase production.
Reverse osmosis, different taps, tremendous amount of research that's always being done on maple.
The other thing I would say in the value add industry, and you kind of touched on, there's a lot of these almost like craft producers in the value add sector that are mostly making things like cheeses and maybe certain types of meat products or whatever. I'm thinking someone like Jasper Hill, who's gotten a lot of notoriety even nationally as a craft cheese producer, or going toe to toe with producers in Europe even and elsewhere around the world that hasn't been seen previously.
And we and those and they're relatively young companies. I mean, Jasper Hill is probably 15 years old
Oh,
in the
right.
scheme. So
It's been
and they have supported their region, and they're based out of Greensboro and Orleans County. But the impact that they've had on the other aspects of agriculture in that region are extraordinary. And I think one thing that, could that model be used in other parts of the state? We have other cheesemakers.
Right.
We have a cheesemaker in Reading that they pay a dairy farmer a premium if they'll deliver a certain product the way they want it. So if they feed their animals a certain way and they deliver this as a certain quality, I'm going to give you a
Great.
premium for it, and it makes the cheese that they need to make.
Yep.
Could we do more of that? Right near here in Websterville, Vermont Creamery is undergoing a tremendous expansion.
There's that word, creamery.
Yeah.
As in maple.
Yeah.
Creamy. We didn't mention that.
They are putting $15 million into that plant. They decided to stay in Vermont.
Great.
They're owned by Land O'Lakes. They're a goat dairy, goat cheese, and cow dairy as
Great.
well. But they're making a bigger line for butter,
Yeah.
a stick butter that they're rolling out this summer.
Right.
They're looking for more farmers to milk goats.
Cool.
And you mentioned Jasper Hill. Jasper Hill is also now have some goats, and they're putting
cheese.
on goat cheese. So there's a trend there with another option for farmers if they want to do
great.
something. And Vermont Creamery will tell you that the model is you need about 300 goats for it to be the crunch the numbers.
Right.
But they're recruiting and trying to get more people to, because they need, as they expand, they're going to need more goat's milk to meet their demand for it.
Is there help from the state for expansion and,
Yeah.
and even starting up?
We have a program called the Working Lands, and Working Lands does offer business planning, but also grants for infrastructure.
Oh, good.
So if you needed that certain cooler or that certain machine or
Right.
something that adds to your bottom line, where you can add more employees or you can keep more animals on the land,
Right.
it's well received and it's very popular,
That's
and so it's Working Lands.
That's good. Because you look at the equipment that they've got on their fields, and you're like, that's
Yeah.
a whole lot of
No,
money.
it's very
Huge.
the equipment and
Yeah.
and it's very, very expensive, those capital investments.
Well, I think we would be remiss not to mention Vermont's most famous value-add product, Ben & Jerry's.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Which sources all of their milk from the St. Albans Cooperative, right?
Yes.
Which is in the process of merging or being bought
Yes.
by, is it Dairy Farmers of America?
Yeah, DFA, Dairy Farmers of America, which is based out of Kansas.
Oh.
And they do have a presence already in Vermont. There are some members already that are members of DFA. But St. Albans is at the point they're in a transition, and they're asking their membership, should we merge
Yeah.
with DFA and become part of their organization? So it's a big decision for them.
Yeah.
As the world moves, there's been consolidation in a number of industries, and agriculture is no different than.
Well, if they're allowed to keep their name, like you said, the Land of Lakes, they've got so much marketing and communication abilities that could really promote.
And
company.
and that's right now, farmers maybe 10 or 15 years ago, they could shop around and decide where they were going to market their milk. So if they wanted to be members of Cabot, and
Yeah.
maybe they didn't want to be members of Cabot anymore, they could go to St. Albans. And St. Albans, if they wanted to go to DFA. Some of those options are not there anymore because there's so much milk out there.
Oh,
So these co-ops and groups are not taking on new members. So there's a bit of risk. There's a bit of risk. You want to hold your market. You want to be able to sell your milk to
right.
somewhere.
Right.
And St. Albans, from what they tell me, didn't believe they had enough money to go back to their farmers, because they're a co-op, to ask for more monies to make those
Right.
investments that they
Right.
needed to make to become more viable. So it's a big decision that the St. Albans members have to make. They have to push the pencil and decide, but one of the driving reasons is to preserve their market.
We should do a show on that.
Yeah, exactly. I love all this stuff. I wanted to skip ahead a little bit, not to confuse us, but you had a first of a kind summit, dairy summit.
Yes.
And I think before we run out of time, I wanted to talk about that and all the lessons you learned from that, and why was it one of a kind, unique, and it sounded great.
We were at the point where, we talked about earlier in the show, we talked about the federal system and how difficult that is to change. But we finally decided, well, what can we do? What can we do ourselves?
Right.
What can we do as a state? What can we do as a group to change the conversation? What things do we have control of? So we need to get everybody in the room, and we need to have an action plan. So what we did was we had a 2-day summit, and I think the most important part of it was led by farmers. And we were able to get, I think, about 110 dairy farmers to go.
Yeah.
We were able to give them scholarships. They were able to go and attend, be there, and they told us what they think we should be doing. And part of it is they needed help in engagement with lawmakers, because lawmakers are making policy.
Right.
But they wanted to invite, one of the action items was they wanted to invite more policymakers, lawmakers onto their farms and see this is what a farm is, because we all have a perception of what a farm is, and we don't. I mean, they're all different. They're all different family dynamics, but they wanted to show them. So that was one thing. They wanted to explore. Could we explore different partnerships? We talked about a little bit about the model where if they contract directly with a milk handler, pay a premium for delivering that. Could we have more of those arrangements around the state?
Right.
Vermont Creamery was there. They talked about recruiting some members of farmers if they wanted to go into a goat dairy.
Great.
Could that be an option for them? The state would have to probably work on it's a different machine to milk a goat than a cow, those type of things. There's talk about payment for ecosystems. Farmers, could we give farmers incentives to do environmental practices that are above and beyond there's the normal regulatory aspect? Could there be a payment for that? So those type of discussions.
Great.
And I think one of the biggest things, I think it helped the mental health a lot. It was kind of a depressing time, but I think getting a couple hundred people in the room saying, what can we do, and spend some quality time.
And
we
they find out they've got the same problems. It probably helps.
It helps, and sharing information. And then we just didn't want to have a summit at the end of the day that said we held a meeting, and so we've got to come out and we've got to do some things. They wanted a dairy advisory council. They wanted dairy farmers to advise the agency of what we're doing. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna get some bus tours in September. We're gonna show people this is what's happening on farms. They wanted more public engagement. They wanted help telling their story, because the consumer now is asking farmers a lot of questions. They want to know how their animals are cared for. They want to know how their land is cared for. They want to know how the product is made. They want to know the animal's name. I mean, they really do.
Really,
I'm not sure I want to know the animal's name. Got you on the line
should
there.
not be named.
So they want to know all this stuff, but they need support and they need help with that. So those are just some of the outcomes. There's many more.
There was one of them, I have to say, it was truth in labeling because of is it real milk or not, and I think they've got a real case there. Some of those things that they're pawning off as milk they're not milk.
And that comes from the nut-based beverages that they're calling themselves milk. We've made comments. The FDA is reviewing all that about what can they put on their label.
It's just wrong.
They're capitalized. The farmers, they're capitalizing on the milk and the strong brand of milk, but a lot of this stuff does not even need to be in the cooler. It can be, and they put it right next to the milk. So it's one of those, and the farm community just wants some, truth in labeling,
For
being
sure.
accurate.
Well, know what you're buying.
They want more.
Like ground up nuts in water,
Yes, right.
That's
yes.
literally what it is.
What is it? Pulp. Wood pulp in cheese. Do you know that?
No.
You know the cheese containers that you buy?
Yeah.
And it's got wood pulp. There's a name they use, but it means wood pulp. So when you buy that already chopped up cheese for the table,
Shredded cheese.
it's wood pulp.
Mm.
Just
So I went to the
we don't
wood
buy that
chipper
anymore.
Yeah. But that's, and the other one is one of the other things they wanted us to encourage more whole milk in schools.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. Well, they tried for a while up at the State House. I hope they're still doing that.
We're trying to, and that's another one that's that's a USDA issue. There's a lot of nutritional guidelines with that, but we all know that if you're young and something doesn't taste great and it's not served properly, you're probably not going to go back to it.
Right.
So we have to make sure the milk is.
That's why you put chocolate in it.
Chocolate is good too. Chocolate is a wonderful replenishing drink after a sporting event, and I see more soccer clubs doing it. I see more as an alternative to a sugary, a drink like that. But a chocolate is good for you. So
Got
good
a lot
old
of
chocolate.
protein and antioxidants.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
thing.
Hot chocolate with this much whipped cream, which is also dairy too. That's good too.
And we had a speaker that came and he said, the dairy folks have got to give people what they want. And he said, you know what? If we want eggnog on the 4th of July and the public wants eggnog, give them eggnog on the 4th
for
of July.
sure.
Don't just give it to them
At Christmas.
at time. And
That's a great idea.
So there's ideas like that, and keep focused on what the consumer wants and
Right.
and how they want it, and they'll be okay. And his prediction was after this sort of nut phase goes through, it will swing back to dairy at some point, and the industry needs to be ready to give them something that they
I
want.
like eggnog in summer.
Well, something that just occurred to me, because you think about, like the coffee industry right now, like it's all like specialty lattes, and a latte is 2/3 milk.
Yeah.
There's like you look at how much espresso goes into a latte.
Yep.
It's basically milk with a little bit of coffee.
Right.
And for this, you pay $3-4.
Right, but it's like everyone focuses on the coffee and where the coffee came from. Why is no one paying attention to where the milk that's going into that when it's mostly milk? Like where is that coming from?
And that's one of those that I'm sure the milk industry is in front of all those coffee producers saying, because you can imagine the impact at one of these major coffee shops, and if they're not putting milk in it or using some alternative, what the impact it would have across the board, because those stores are everywhere as you go now.
be a little
They're
angry.
popping up everywhere.
Yeah. Could you tell us what the Fantastic Farmer program is?
Yeah.
I thought that sounded pretty
Fantastic.
interesting.
We from time to time, we wanted to go out and just visit with farmers to see what they're doing and show, again, we're in an age where farmers need to tell their story and what they're doing.
Oh, cool.
So this is, not too far from what we're doing here. We're sitting around the table
chatting.
talking about them. We may go into the barn. We may show the animals. We've done everything from, we have an operation where they have cows that are raised for beef, and then right next door they have the shop where they sell the beef, and so there's
great.
stories like that.
Yeah.
They may be custom operators where they sell the hay and they're diversified. So there's stories. There's stories about Vermonters and how they run their operations, and a lot of them are very good at what they do, and they're willing to share their story
At
with
the
us.
farmers market here in Montpelier, as I'm sure in almost all farmers market, they've got people from farms selling their meat, and I always buy from them because I just think it's better,
Yeah,
closer to the end
you
product,
won't-
and then
Yeah, and you probably will not go back to some of the other stuff you may see in some of the bigger stores after having the
right.
freshness
It's
of
really
it.
good.
Oh, yeah.
You know where
It's really
you know where it comes from, and it's
Even eggs I buy locally, and they taste different.
sure.
It's just amazing to me.
Sure.
They just taste richer. I don't know what it is.
You can definitely, you can definitely taste the difference
Yeah.
between like local grass-fed beef
Yeah, for
versus
sure.
something that you purchase at a large retail chain. Like you can,
Costco.
there's a definite difference. Like
Yeah,
you can taste
I agree
it.
with you.
Anson, one thing that you were asked in the article we've kind of been focusing on today is what you think the biggest change in agriculture is, and you had a kind of an interesting response. You said we don't slow down enough.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, I think and it's not agriculture alone. We're quick to judge, and we want solutions very quickly, and it's not blame. It's just where we are. I mean,
Well, it's the world we live in,
haven't
isn't
haven't
it?
checked our phones in
Yeah,
40 minutes, and this is probably
Starting to get
And it's on my
anxiety.
head.
anxiety. We haven't
Right.
checked our social
Yeah.
media site, and I think it's kind of like in a microwave situation where, we want it to be. We've got something happen. Here it is. It needs to be solved immediately, and someone's to blame, and sometimes things just happen, and
Right.
they're mistakes, and we try to protect them, correct them. But I just think it's sometimes our expectations are really high, and I don't say that as an excuse. I just think that's the way that the world is now. It's just that we're just really fast-paced, and everything has to be solved immediately without thought.
What is it, instant gratification?
Well, and everything has to fit into a 30-second soundbite.
Yeah.
and
Yeah, right.
I think that's one of the issues when you look at, the struggles that Facebook has had with media and how you filter media to get accurate information out there, and it's because everyone's listening for that instant gratification, that 30-second
The soundbite.
Exactly, and the problem is that reality is very rarely that simple. You can very
Yeah.
rarely get the reality of a situation into a 30-second soundbite.
And in agriculture, a lot of people think one size will fit all. So if you identify, this will work for this one. Well, we got 14 counties,
Yeah.
and every county in Vermont is different.
Right.
Every land base is different. You've got a family dynamic that's probably different. The finances are different. So it's a challenge where, we all should go organic. Well, not everyone can go organic.
Right.
Not everyone can be, we're all going to have, goat farmers. Well, we can't all be goat farmers. But if we give people enough choices and options and solid information, maybe that will lead them to a determination of what's best for them.
Where do they go for advice? Can they call you? Is there somebody on your staff that really...
Vermont has a pretty good system for business planning. We have a program that we don't run, but it's run through the Farm Viability Program, which we participate in through the Housing Conservation Board. And they write business plans.
That's
So they'll
right.
sit down at the table with you and say, this is what I want to do, this is
Right.
going to work, where my market's going to be, what do I need to meet my goals. So I think that's the most important thing that, and then just, if you're handing the farm over to the operation to the next generation, there needs to be planning with that, and that's a big need that we have right now, is trying to get the next generation of farmers.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
that in the article was one of the issues that you highlighted as a real problem, which is like in construction. What's the average age of construction? Like
Oh,
50
it's
something,
in the 50s, yeah.
58 or something? Are young
Yeah.
people stepping up or not?
Well, every industry is having its challenge, but I see and I have no hard data, but it's my anecdotal stuff. I do see a generation that's never worked on farms or land wanting to give it a try.
Oh.
And there's a lot of young people out there, and it may not be strictly in dairy farming. It may be they want to be in grass-fed beef, or they may want to grow vegetables. But I do see a movement where people are wanting to get closer to land and animals. And the challenge we have is to make sure that they have the mentor or someone that they can
help.
get to, or be able to afford maybe the land that's available for them to do their operation, because we all know land is very expensive in Vermont. Anywhere it's very expensive. But I do see an indication, again, no hard data, but I do see sort of this new wave of people that
That's great.
maybe they want to
Let's
take
hope
a
so,
stab at
right?
it. And what we got to do is we got to encourage that, support that, and see
Do
if
they
we
have
can-
things like internships and stuff?
We do.
for-
There's an apprenticeship that's run for farmers. It's not run by us, but other groups.
Great.
So that's probably a good way to get started.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
before you dive full into wanting
Yeah.
to own a farm, it's like, hey, I'll work it for a year and see if this is for
Great.
you or
Yeah,
not.
because that's a lot of work to invest a lot of money in.
Yeah.
One of the other things is we're kind of talking about industries that you're involved in, specialty foods, and one of the fastest growing industries in the U.S. right now is actually craft distilleries. We have a couple of those here in Vermont, and they're often being started and run by millennials. It tends to be younger group, younger than the beer industry. And we've got Stonecutter Spirits, we've got Bar Hill, who we were talking about before the show, both of which run by fairly young entrepreneurs that are trying to get started up and make something. And so it's a pretty cool industry that seems to be getting a foothold here.
And that can tie back to the land as well, because
Yeah.
can we grow the grains
Right,
for those drinks? And that's happening with Bar Hill is trying to grow that. We have an enormous amount of wonderful bread makers in
Oh, for
Vermont.
sure,
Could we
right.
source more of our grains, our rye and all that stuff through that? So
And
that's
wasn't there something we talked about up north where they were growing pods to use for insulation? Milkweed.
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 use
Yeah,
for-
there's
are
some-
they
there's-
still doing that?
There's some research going on whether to use that.
I mean, how cool is that?
Could you put, in pillows and
Yeah.
insulation and so forth? So there's some activity
Who
going
wakes up in the morning and says, "I think I'm going to take my milkweed and make"?
I can grow milkweed. I can grow
there you go.
milkweed.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
Seems
Well,
like
it's a
Vermont's
hardy
the perfect
summer thing,
environment for that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I went to Sebago, a restaurant up in Maine,
Uh-huh.
and the woman gave us a straw made out of corn. I said, "Who the
that's
heck
cool.
wakes up in the morning and says,
Yeah.
I've got corn,
And
I'm
that's-
going to make a straw"?
And you talk about the
Perfect.
specialty foods. It's just amazing what usually starts in someone's kitchen. So they get it in the kitchen, then they get it to an incubator space where they, maybe rent some space, and they've got the utensils and the cooking, and then before you know it, they got their own space, and they're going to market. But that's how they start.
Yeah, and it was perfect. It was solid. It didn't degrade in whatever we were drinking. But anyway,
Like paper?
Yeah, exactly. Well, paper gets all it
Yeah.
just loses its shape. It was great. You didn't taste corn. It just was a straw.
Yeah,
Isn't that
it's,
cool?
It's a lot of that stuff. The entrepreneurs and tremendous energy and
Yeah.
not without hard work.
Do that.
But
Well,
Listen,
I know the folks who, we only got a few minutes left, but I know the folks who started Pot Liquor Kitchen, and I met them way back when they were doing, like the fairs, like and stuff, just locally, and now they've got industrial kitchen, they've
Right.
got, and they're doing like specialty jams and jellies that are like, some of them are beer infused or wine infused. They're pretty cool operation, and
Good
they've
stuff
grown
going on.
tremendously.
I wanted to, because we only have a minute and 15 seconds. You have to talk about my favorite show, For the Birds.
For the Birds.
25 years this year.
yeah, I've been doing. It's on WDEV and WLVB, and I've been, Saturday mornings and weekends been talking about birds. We spend about 10-15 minutes. Chip Darmstead from the Nature Center in Montpelier is
Right,
the co-host
good.
with me, and
But you used to be with
Brian Pfeiffer. Brian
right,
Pfeiffer
Brian
was a
Pfeiffer.
fanatic birder,
Yeah.
real thing. I'm the 4-H birder. I can hold my own, but just going up on the farm, knowing the various birds. But
That's great.
it's the only job I have never changed. I've done it 25
Well,
years.
if it works,
25 years.
But you
and
said it started by accident.
it started by
Somebody asked a
accident.
question.
Someone called the radio station. I don't know what this bird is. Could you tell me what it is? 20 calls later, we figured out it was a red pole. But it piqued my interest.
Yeah.
Like, boy, that's really popular.
Well, obviously, people are interested.
Well,
25 years.
Birding is really fun because it has, Vermonters love nature, and you can sit in your kitchen and be a birder,
Yeah.
or you can hike the trail and be a birder, or you can travel the world and be a birder,
That's great.
and you can spend a lot of money on birdseed.
Yes, you can. But you got to take them in for the bear.
Yeah, so it's been an absolute joy, and
That's great.
it's just some fun thing I do,
great.
and
I'm glad you're still doing it. It's been a joy to have you on.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary.
thank you for thinking of
joining us.
agriculture.
Absolutely. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.